Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody.
Hi.
How are you
How are
all?
you?
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Certainly can.
Excellent. I'd just like to be acknowledged for the nice, clean background I've got that is not fake. How are we all?
Good, thanks. Yourself?
Yeah, good. You all recovering from conf?
I was so tired. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I think I drank for 5 days straight. So anyway, let me go share screen and I'll jump in. And then we should have some time at the end for questions. Alrighty, can you guys all see that okay?
Yep. And
Excelente. So obviously you all know who I am. I'm someone who's very skilled with the GIFs in Canva now. I'm going to show you how to make it rain money. Do you like that messaging?
do.
Okay, so first, if you don't, I know what you guys anyway, but if you don't know what we do, we provide strategic advice and planning, and we help people grow with grants. We always talk about government grants, but we actually help with all the grants. It just happens that most of the grants we work on are government grants. So the idea of today is really to extend on the conversations that I had with you guys last week and just give you a bit more information around, the stats and facts of grants, to let you know what kind of grants are out there, to share with you our top tips and some of the pitfalls that we see when people are applying for grants. I'll share with you a couple of case studies. One of them is our own business. And then I'm going to talk to you a little about the Export Market Development Grant, because most of you can be applying for that. It opens next week and it's an eligibility-based grant. So to kick it off, I just wanted to kind of guide your expectations about grants. In fact, have any of you used grants before? Yep. Okay, cool. Alana, so what have you done with grants before?
So we had a trainee that we put on, so we had a grant for that. And also I've just starting a business with my friend. It's separate to our main business. And we've applied for a small business grant for that to do the website and, cyber stuff. And
yeah, awesome. Oh, that's right. I remember I made a note to check out what's around for cyber for you at the moment, because there is quite a bit out there. So as a general rule, grants are going to cover you sort of for about up to $1 million, and there's a bit of complexity in that, but as a general rule, anything over $1 million is really venture capital and not grant space. And grants are always going to be targeting something. So Alana just shared, she's used a grant to grow her team, which we have as well. Grants for small business, grants for specifically things like getting websites in place. So I have a slide for that specifically, because I think sometimes people think of grants as one holistic thing. It's like saying, what's a business strategy? There are all types of different strategies depending on what you're trying to achieve. And same goes with grants. There are different types of schemes that will do different things for you. So right now, well, actually there's always around about 3,000 grants open in Australia. I think there's actually about 4,000 this week. And they cover all industries, all activity types, and all different sorts of things. Success rate on average is about 17%. So for that reason, don't get depressed about that, but just know that when it comes to competitive grants, you might have to apply 5 or 6 times before you get one. And hyper important to make sure that you're aware what the grant is targeting, because grant trends always follow demographic trends. So it's always going to be about, what the government is hearing, what they know is a problem, what they've identified to be a pain point. They'll usually allocate funding to. This week, $54 billion worth of money available. So we do a check every Monday morning, and that's what's around this week. So there's a lot of money out there. Just to give you a bit of a sense of where that is and what it's for, this is the breakdown nationally, and you can look state by state here. And then in terms of what activities does it cover, this is the breakdown of activities as it sits this week. And then this is what it looks like if we look from the industry's perspective. So, and we like to track this because obviously we want to be marketing to people in specific industries if that's where there's lots of money currently or upcoming. So in terms of what kinds of grants there are and what you can use them for, there's really 5 different types of core grants. There's one-off or rolling grants. So one-off grant is like, you know, responding to an identified pain point out in industry and open for a period of time and then close with no plan of opening again. Or it could be something that opens once a year and then closes. A rolling grant is a grant that remains open all year round. So that's something like the Accelerating Commercialisation Grant. There are a few of them around. They're grants that stay open all the time. There's an ongoing funding pool for them, and so they just remain open. There are grants for research and innovation, and these are grants like the Research and Development Tax Incentive, which is actually a rebate or a reimbursement on tax you've spent if you're doing genuine R&D. And R&D doesn't have to be, people often think that it's only technology related, but it doesn't have to be. It can also be, you know, you're researching a new way to bring a service to the market, or it's a, you know, an innovation in terms of it's never been done this way before. And in fact, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me sharing, but Matt from BX has used that for the whole BX model, right? A different way of delivering to the market. And that's really the Australian government's way of incentivizing us to continue to do things differently. And I do like to focus on RDTI because it is an eligibility grant, and often entrepreneurs think, oh, I'm not really developing machinery or technology, so that's not for me. It is a bit of a complex process though, that one. Commercialisation grants, that's essentially money for marketing. So this is where you've got something that's either at MVP or beyond, it's been beta tested, it's gone well, you've got good, they call it in the industry, it's called market pull, but it's like good indication that people actually want this thing. And now you need some money to get the message out there. And then, of course, there's expansion funding. Then that can often be stuff like apprenticeships, traineeships, rebates for training, but also things like the Export Market Development Grant, which I'll share with you today. And then, of course, we always have disaster recovery funding. So anytime there's a declared disaster, not long after, we'll see a pool of funds available to help people get back on their feet. And that's usually federal and then supported by state-based funds. Okay, in terms of my top tips for success, I call it the 5 Ps because I do love a little framework. So number one, you got to be in it to win it, right? If you participate and you know that it's going to be on average a 17% success rate, then you're ahead of the game when you start. So you got to be in it to win it. You got to keep your eye on the ball. There's a bucket load of grants opening and closing every week. 30 new grants open every week in Australia and 10 close. So, you know, it's really about staying on top of it and making sure that you know what's out there. And to be honest, like probably 2/3 of my team's work is just staying on top of what's opening and closing, changing, who do we need to let know about what. Planning is also really important. So planning is about understanding how someone else is going to perceive your business, because often there'll be like 3,000 applications and only 50 tickets to play. So it's really important that you do the planning work, have your recent financials at hand, understand where you're going and what you're doing and how you can explain that to someone who knows nothing about you, your business, project or product, and nothing about your industry. And then preparation is kind of part of that same thing, right? So you want to be doing your SWOT. You want to be really clear about what you're offering. You need to know why it's different to other things like this that are out there in the market. So you've got to be able to really pitch well to an investor. And we often talk about, you know, do that work up front as part of your critical thinking or your strategic thinking, like understand what is the problem out there that you're solving? How are you solving it? Why are you the best person to solve it? Why should it be solved now? What do you need to solve it in terms of funding and what you would do with that funding? And what are the outcomes that would come from that? And also really important to understand the market opportunity. So what is the size of the market and how do we verify that in numbers? Because funders for any reasonable amount of money, like anything over sort of 100,000, they're going to want to know what is the size of this market anyway? How many people out there? How much are they going to spend? What are we going to generate in terms of economic or employment stimulation? Positioning is also really important, and that's because one of the key pitfalls is people don't take time to understand what the grant is. They're just like, yeah, my idea is so good. No one else is doing it like this. But they don't really think about, this is a win-win arrangement I'm entering with the government or whoever the funder might be. And what do they get out of this? And the government's way of kind of framing that up is the scope and intent of the guidelines. So it's important before you even think about applying to really understand the guidelines properly and make sure that you are well positioned to deliver on the outcomes they're looking for. And then projectification is all about taking your business and turning your grant submission into a project. So for most competitive grants, the funder is going to want to see where does it start, end, and what's in the middle. What am I going to be able to put my hand up later and say, I point to that and say, we did that, we funded that project. So they don't want to just give you a bit of money to explore your good idea. They want to give you money to get the idea right off the ground and into the market. In many cases, not always. Sometimes grants are specifically for like a portion for the research component to see if something new would work. And in that case, it doesn't actually matter whether you ever monetize it or generate revenue from it. And same goes for the export market development grant. It's about helping you prepare to export. And I'll share some more on that shortly for you. Okay, so if you want to know the best way to stay informed, it is to join our Facebook group. You're welcome to do that. And look, I must admit, I'm not like super great at being in there and being engaged, but it is the quickest way to drop questions. So we do keep a bit of an eye on it, and we are planning over the next 90 days, it's on my 90-day plan, to be more engaged in there. So if you have questions or you just want to check something quickly, that's the place to go. It's called Grant Winners Gang. The pitfalls that we see consistently with clients who are unsuccessful is that, number one, they were probably poorly positioned to start with, so they were never really a good fit for the scope and intent of the grant. And we'll often look, like people often come to us and say, oh, we've been applying for years, we never get anything. We get them to send us a couple of their previous applications, have a look at them, and it's like, yeah, you were never really in the running for that. Or they maybe are not prepared, so they rush into submitting in the portal, and often a portal application can look like it's quite simple, and so people will be like, oh yeah, there's not much there, we just got to answer a few questions about the business and put our basic information in. That is the case for like Smarty grants, but other ones, even though the application might look simple, they're actually requiring quite a lot of thinking in the background, and information in your, could be like 800 words, and you think, oh yeah, I just have to bang out a response to that. But we will often write 3,000 words to bring it back down to 800, because it needs to be very clear and concise what you're actually doing. And you need to make sure that you understand what the evidence attachments are that are required, because often you'll have to provide an accountant's verification or a profit and loss statement for a certain time range. So you want to make sure that you understand what's required before you start. The other pitfall is inflexibility. So people are often like, oh yeah, no, we don't really do it that way. You know, our process is a bit different. But if you want someone to give you $150,000, you're entering into, you know, a collaborative partnership there. You got to be willing to think about what you do and how you can shape it so that it's a fit for what this grant needs. And that leads to, often people can be a bit apathetic. They'll be like, oh yeah, we tried for a grant a couple of years ago, we didn't get it. They gave it to this person, or they always give it to this industry. Like, I would just encourage you, based on the stats, to consider it as a growth strategy. And I'll share with you how it's been amazing for our business. But you know, it's like any other business strategy. You got to work it, and you got to remain consistent over time. These are some of the key places that we recommend you go to stay in touch, but I will give you a link to our grants guide. These are my favorite top 10 grants. But all of these you can find in our grants guide, and you probably would have seen a copy of that on the table last week, but you're welcome to download it for yourself. Actually, the digital copy is better than the printed copy because it's got links to all the grants in it. That was created by Daphne, one of my offshore team, who is here with us today. So thanks, Daph, great work. And we update this like 3 or 4 times a year, so it stays fairly current. Not everything is open at the time that it's in there, but we include some stuff in there that's closed because we think it's good for people to know about these types of grants. So that's another good way that you can stay in touch with what's there. And if you happen to be not-for-profit or in the community sector, we've got a community sector grants guide there as well that kind of specifies stuff for the community sector. So just in terms of how complex should our responses be, because people will often ask me this, and I don't have it here, but normally I have on my desk a couple of examples of grants. But it's a little bit like asking how long is a piece of string, right? As a general rule, you should think about the complexity of your responses in terms of what you're asking for. So if you're only asking for $15,000 or $25,000, you might be able to do that in sort of 3-5 pages. If you're asking for, $250,000, then you need a lot more detail. And we did recently, well, it was about 1.5 years ago now, but a $4 million grant, and it was probably this thick in terms of the paperwork. So it had development applications attached and all sorts of things. So once you go over about 100, even 50 to 100, you need to be providing more evidence and support, because remember the funding body is looking at your grant in comparison with a whole heap of other ones. And so they're looking at, does it tick all the boxes? Does it have all the attachments? Is it clear that this person is serious about what they're doing and has put effort into the submission? These are some questions you can ask yourself to get grant ready. And we do actually, if you want to be doing grants yourself, we do actually have a little mini course that you're welcome to access. Just send me what is it that the young ones say? Just DM me and I'll get you a link for that course if you're inclined to try and learn about it and do it all yourself. That will guide you. But these questions, I think they're also in the grants guide too. But it's really about the thinking behind the questions. I'm a strategist by background, so we sell strategy, right? But a good strategy is not worth the paper it's written on by the end of the process, because the real benefit of having a strategy developed is the process that you go through to get it on paper. Once it's on paper, you kind of know it and don't really need it anymore. So, you want to be asking yourself questions like, how's the funding going to help you to deliver on the intent and achieve the outcomes of the grant? What have been your achievements and challenges so far? So a bit of a, SWOT. What does your growth trajectory look like? What's your plan to get to the market if you get this funding? What are the key activities you're going to do over the next 12 to 24 months in your business or in this specific project? And I don't know if you guys find this, but I'm sure lots of blueprinters do. I find when you're starting something new, like a new project, it can be really difficult to kind of think about that as a business in and of itself and be like, okay, what are the activities related to that project and where do I fit them into my calendar and how can I make sure I deliver on it? And really importantly, you want to do your research, whatever that looks like for your project or business. You want to make sure that you validate your idea, because we see a lot of people get grant money and get down the track and realize that no one actually wants to buy that product. So there's no commercial outcome for it in the end. Okay, a couple of quick case studies for you. So how you can grow your team without staff costs. This is a little bit different now because the apprenticeship scheme has changed, but I think we will see some bit of a return to what was around during COVID. But you would remember that the Boosting Apprenticeship Scheme during COVID was actually extended to enable us to access it for any trainee as well. And the whole idea was to keep people employed at low cost during COVID and to keep training people, so keep developing skills during that time. And it allowed us to get 50% reimbursement on wages and could be combined with state-based employment reimbursement. So that was like in Queensland, we had the Back to Work scheme, so that was a 20,000 paid cashback. That's still around, as they are in Victoria and WA. New South Wales doesn't have such a great scheme, but they were really generous schemes, and this is an example of what we were able to help one client do during that time. So they had determined they needed 4 new staff in Australia, not offshore, to help them achieve their goal. That was going to be a wage cost of $224,000 per year for them. We were able to claw back, I don't know what happened there. We were able to claw back $182,000 of that for them using the Boosting Apprenticeship Scheme, 2 Back to Work schemes in Queensland and 2 of the Jobs Victoria scheme, which gave you back $15,000 per employee. So pretty cool outcome, right? The adjusted wage cost was only $10,500 per quarter, or $42,000 across year 1 for 4 new team members. And so then they quadrupled their revenue because they had all that capacity. And then this is an active case study on our own business. So I'm not sure if you guys would be aware that my background is in strategy and corporate and government and helping corporate and governments to build better culture. And I wanted to build a tech product for a specific purpose in that in that business. So I went and got myself a small grant. And this is how I kind of got into the grants game. I went and got myself a small grant to build out the prototype of that. We tested it with a couple of government departments who were clients of ours. They loved it. We went back and got more money to build it into a full SaaS solution. And then we scaled a team using that so that we had more capacity. And then we started marketing it offshore and specifically into the mining industry. And then we used the Export Market Development Grant to claim back 50% of what that cost us. So that we're not at 2 million yet in that business, but we will be. And I'm hoping that we will be by next conference. I got a deal with Dale that if I get it to $2 million inside 2 years and grants was the main growth strategy, then he wants me to share that with the community. So that's exciting and we're on track for that. And that's really why I started helping people with grants, because I realized in the process that people just have a crack at a grant here and there, and they're not really strategic about it. They're not thinking about that 17% success rate. They're not asking themselves which are the 5 or 6 grants that are going to be best for me in the next 12 months. And so they kind of miss that opportunity. It's like that. If we just threw $100 at Facebook advertising this week and never again, probably wouldn't really, monetize the opportunity or leverage the opportunity. So let me just check. Does anyone have any questions so far? My plan from here is to talk to you about the Export Market Development Grant. No, am I talking too fast?
No, you're not. I'm just gobsmacked. It's the potential is just insane. So
I know, so exciting, right? But it's like because most people only know grants because they know those little ones like the JobKeeper or the $5,000 one or $10,000 that comes up for a website once a year. But they don't, particularly in groups like our community, because we are doing things that are new and innovative and we tend to be quite flexible. So it can be such an amazing growth strategy. I just think it's a massively underutilized opportunity. All right.
So obviously you're going to talk to us, Kim, about how you can help us to go down this path.
Yeah. I'll let you know what the pathways are for us at the end for sure. But I mean, and the intent really of this is just to provide you guys with value. Like it's more about my love for this community than wanting to make sales. But I do think that most of you are eligible for Export Market Development Grant. Has anyone used it before or no? Okay, let me tell you all about it. This is my favorite grant because even though it's a little complex to kind of pull it together, it's eligibility based. So as long as you provide what is required or you give us what we need to provide it for you, you get the money, right? And that's why I've got the love heart on it there. But it is, in terms of what it actually is, it's the Australian government's way of incentivizing small business in Australia to go big, to go global. It's good for Australia. It increases our economy, obviously, because the revenue's all coming back into Australia. But it also increases our profile and it helps businesses to grow. So it can often be more useful to get something off the ground and then spend your money marketing outside Australia if you have a product that's transferable, and it can be a product or a service. That's often a better option because in that first couple of years when we're, trying to generate revenue and cash flow is tight, we're getting 50% back of what we spend on marketing. So any business can apply for it. You just need to either have clients overseas, so that's called having export revenue, or you plan to, or would like to, and you may be marketing now or you want to market outside Australia. So what does it cover? You can claim commissions on, so you can claim back 50% across 3 different levels, and I'll explain those to you. But the activities that are eligible are overseas representatives, which means anyone you might be paying commission or affiliate fees to. It also covers setting up offices somewhere else, like recruitment fees to get people on board over there. It covers consultancy fees, so that could be someone that's helping you plan to export. It could be marketing and promotional stuff. Maybe you need to rework your website for a different market. It could be people like me. So anyone you're kind of paying to help you grow. And it could also be like research in those countries as well. It will cover your visits, which is travel to those countries up to a maximum of 21 days, airfares, accommodation, and a daily allowance, which is about $300 a day. So if you kind of plan to go over and look around at whether something is a good option for you, or you know there is a market for you, you want to go attend a conference somewhere else, you want to try speaking somewhere else, you can claim back 50% of those costs. It'll cover samples, and your samples don't have to be product samples. So we've got one client who's going to Canada later this year to run some workshops in the educational environment. So they will claim the full cost of their workshops, which I think was about $5,000 a day or something, as samples that they're giving away. So it's really to encourage that marketing, right? But maybe you have a book you want to give away. Maybe you do have some samples you want to give away. It will cover trade fairs, seminars, or in-store promos that you might do over there, and also subscriptions. So say you're a member of, I don't know, the International Grant Building Society. I don't think there is one of those. I should probably create one of those next, hey? See if I can get myself a grant for that. Yeah, so it'll cover you going over and attending anything like that. It will also cover trips if you need to bring a buyer in. So you might have a potential client, they want to come check out your manufacturing facility. You can be reimbursed for 50% of that. It will cover registration and insurance of eligible intellectual property. So that's like trademarking or patents fees you might have to pay to get ready to go overseas. And importantly, at level 1, it will cover training and education. So you can claim back half your business blueprint fees if you're on tier 1. So let me explain the different tiers to you. Tier 1 is, I'd like to export. I don't currently have any revenue coming from outside Australia, but I'd like to. So that's preparing to export, and you can claim back half of up to $80,000 a year on that one. Importantly, at any of the 3 levels, you can claim 8 times in a row. Well, actually, they don't even have to be consecutive years, but you can claim 8 times, and you can receive a maximum of $770,000 back on this grant. So tier 1, maximum 40,000 claim if you spend 80,000 or half of whatever you do spend. Tier 2 is a 80,000 reimbursement if you spend 160. So that is, I've already got clients and I can prove that I've got clients. So you need to be able to evidence the export revenue for that. And we usually just get a letter from your accountant. We can tell you what they need to say, or something like that. Or if you've got a printout that shows export revenue, that's good. If
Sorry,
you
Kim,
are, yeah.
Can it be backdated as well?
No. It's forward year plan, this grant. If you're operating out of Xero, I'm sure you can do it in every system, but I only know Xero. I just recommend putting in the source field export if it's money from a client outside Australia. It's a really easy way to capture it and prove it later. So that's 80 on 160. Or half of whatever you are spending if it's less than that, as long as you've got clients. Tier 3, we've already got clients, we've got export revenue, but we're making what they call a strategic shift. So maybe entering a new market, like it could be a new niche or a new country, or it could be like we're diversifying what we offer and we've got this whole new product to market. So a good example of that would be, I get the export market development grant for our other business. But now if I wanted to launch, this grants business overseas, then that would be a strategic shift. That one will give you back 150,000 on a 300 spend, or half of whatever you spend if it's less than that. Now, in terms of that question about how does it work, it's a forward-looking grant. So you plan now, applications open next week, and they're only open till mid-April for the next financial year. So what that involves is you tell the government, this is what we think we're going to spend across those different categories for the next 12 months, and put together a few other bits and pieces, probably making it sound a bit over simple. You do have to provide a 2-market plan explaining who you are and what you do. If you work with us, we'll do that for you though. And then you need a couple of other pieces of evidence as well. Then you submit now, then they all get assessed. And then in terms of those money, so they're the upper limit, right? Like tier 1 is upper limit 40,000. It was 40,000 a couple of years ago. Last year was 5,000 extra people applied at tier 1, and it went down to 10,000 per person. My gut feel is it'll probably go up a bit this year, but there's like a total pool for each tier. And so they will allocate, an even amount dependent on the number of applicants each year. But it's a maximum of 40 at tier 1, 80 at tier 2, and 150 at tier 3. So then they assess that, they figure out how many people have applied, split it between all the applicants, and then you will get your approval. Usually takes 6 to 8 weeks. Last year they opened in July and they were still like assessing in November. So they're trying to clean that up this year by opening next week. So opening early and keeping the open period much shorter. So it'll only be open for 1 month. And then the intention is you would get your agreement in place before the financial year begins, so you can go spend with certainty and claim back. And at that tier 1, so it's a 1-year agreement, so you have to reapply each year. At that tier 1, the money is just deposited into your account. So you provide your account details with your application and the money will just get deposited straight to you about a week, 10 days after you sign off on the agreement. At level 2 and 3, you have to go spend the money first and then claim it back by providing evidence, which is usually your invoice for one of the largest expenditure items. Okay, so you get your approval, you get an email from them, it says, yep, you're approved. And then after that, they send you an agreement to sign off on that lands in your MyGov ID portal. You just go in and accept it. And then you're good to go with your spending. So you've got your agreement in place. And at that point, that's where, if you're working with us, where we're out. So obviously we can't access your MyGov ID portal. So at that point, once your funding is secured, we're kind of finished. But we will we will obviously give you a hand if you need to understand the document. Can be a bit overwhelming sometimes if you're not used to those kinds of legal documents. And then you make your claim back if you're 2 or 3. If you're level 1, you've already received it. And then at the end of the financial year, you'll be required to produce, in this scheme, it's called a milestone report. So they'll send you an email, you click on the link, you go and fill out some questions, just like, did you achieve what you intended to achieve? It is an acquittal process in that you do provide your largest invoice here to evidence that you spent the money the way it was approved. But it's also for them to collect data about who accesses this scheme and what they might need in the future. What you need for this one for application, you need a profit and loss statement, a balance sheet. If you're going for level 2 or 3, you need that evidence of export. We can guide you through that. And you need a to-market plan. I don't have an example of one on me, but it's like a commercialization strategy. If you're working with us, we prepare that for you. But if not, yeah, you just need to sit down and get a commercialization plan in place that says, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is who our target market is, this is our budget for the next 12 months, and this is how we're going to spend it. So if you want to work with us, we offer a 100% guarantee, so no win, no fee. We ask you to pay $9.97 up front. That's just because obviously we've got to pay the team while we're doing the work. And that will be 10% of tier 1 if you're tier 1, but we offer a 10% no win, no fee guarantee. So if you're tier 2 or 3, we just send you a subsequent invoice once you secure the funds. Oh, that's that one, actually. What have I done there? I've got them back the front, I think. Yeah, so that should take you through to the Export Market Development Grant if you know that you want us to do it for you. It's a very smooth system for us because we've been doing it for 2 years. We did about 67 of them last year. We were successful with all of them. But in the case that I think we've just got a second option there, if you want us to look at what other grants are you eligible for, we do that via strategy call. It's usually about half an hour, and then we go away, the team does the research for you, and then we produce a list. So both options are actually costed the same, but EMDG is just no win, no guarantee. No win, no guarantee, no win, no pay. And then the other option is jump on a strategy call. Let's talk specifically about my business and see what other stuff I can access. So that's really it from me. Happy to answer any questions. I'll just, yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. Queries, thoughts? You're all silent, so I've either bamboozled you or I've done my job so well you have no questions.
Thanks, Kim. You've done really well. I was just remembering I did another grant and during COVID, which was the one that we could put like all the stuff on the cars and all that sort of stuff. So
yeah. Because where are you guys based?
Queensland.
Yeah. So Queensland has some of the best commercialization funding in Australia because we do those little grants which open 4 times a year. So for small businesses, we we offer the 5,000 grant, which opens 4 times a year, and you just can get funded. Actually, this is a really good strategy for some of you as well. You can get funded against a proposal. So a lot of clients we work with, they work with us because they want to have 20 clients come in through that grant. So for example, if you have clients who could use you and could potentially claim you back on the EMDG, then you want to let them know about it, right? So a lot of our clients are like, oh, we're in Queensland, and that, say if they're like graphic designers, then we'll do a campaign with them when that Business Basics open, and they might get 25 new clients because they submit a proposal, for their specific business. So that's also a really good strategy with grants, depending on what your businesses are.
No, that's a really good point, because I got my sister to go for it. And like I said, we couldn't go for it in our main business, but I'd started a secondary business with my friend. So we've gone for that, but we haven't received, it hasn't finished yet for the latest one.
Yeah, so Alana, for you also, you could look at that next level up. So Queensland's got that, it's called the Business Boost. It's a DESBERT grant, Department of Employment.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So that is for businesses whose revenue is between 300,000 and 600,000. And it's really to help them automate and streamline, because there's a real pain point at that level, which you guys are probably all aware of, that sort of 250, 300, getting up to $1 million. There's like some real challenges in there. Oh, look at Daphne go. She's dropped the link for it into the chat for you. Thanks, Daph. Yeah, so for your IT business, you could be marketing around that, like some Facebook ads, like, are you a small business who needs to improve, I don't know, IT management, need on-call support sort of thing, and then you would be giving them a $15,000 proposal, which they would submit, and they're approved based on their eligibility and the eligibility of the proposal. So they have to spend it with you. It's not like they can get it and then go spend it somewhere else.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, we wouldn't be able to apply for it, but I like it that they could apply for it to possibly pay for our services. Yeah,
and you could do ads like just we do them for Export Market Development Grant, because most people and that's why we do no win, no fee, and we don't really make any money on that grant itself, but it's a good lead gen exercise for us, because most people who are EMDG eligible are eligible for other things as well. So it's like a good way for us to just get talking to people. But yeah, you could be doing it like, are you a Queensland based business generating between 300,000 and 600,000, wanting to I don't know, whatever is the unique selling point for the IT business, talk to us, government funding is available. And then you would just create one standardized proposal for them for that amount of money, and you would give them the link. If you want to do that, let me know next time it opens, and I'll give you, we don't do those ones because they're too small, but we've got like a checklist I can give you, and then you can slap your brand on it and use that with your clients.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
It just like, go here, fill out this detail, get an accountant's verification. Here's my proposal.
Yeah, cool. So, I mean, really the grants, not just for our own business, but also to try and get other businesses to go for the grants to try and pay for our services.
Yeah, so that's right. And I'm super happy for you guys. Like, I mean, I wouldn't do it if there was 500 of you on here, but I'm super happy for you guys. If something like that comes up that you think is workable, I can jump on and do a grants presentation for your people. I can just run some ads and get the leads in, and then I can do a bit of an overview for you of what the grant is and what they'll need. Those ones they have to apply for themselves, because they're so simple, right? All they need is the proposal. So most people don't need any help with that anyway. But yeah, that can't be done by a third-party IP address. It has to be like owner done. They can be a bit of a bummer though, because like the last Queensland one opened and closed in about 45 minutes or something, because there's only a limited pool of funds available. So it's just like whoever is in there in the queue and gets their application in first. But you can't apply for it more than once. So, every time you don't get it, there's more chance you'll get it next time, because the previous applicants can't apply.
Yeah. I mean, the last time the small $5,000 one that I applied for this other business that we're setting up, they actually did timed check-ins. So you were sort of like in a waiting queue, and you had to wait until it was your turn to actually put the information in to get through one. Then you had to do stage 2. Yeah, it's a bit of a pain. But I'm disappointed because my sister's business, she should have done it properly, and she would have gotten it. She's NDIS type thing, but she didn't.
Yeah, right. I'll give you a tip for her, because we talk to a lot of people about NDIS. NDIS businesses are, in my opinion, better to, like, you should give her that the link to that community grants guide, but NDIS businesses are better to focus on the project rather than that they are NDIS, because, you know, the NDA is just such a schmozzle at the moment, and the whole framework is being revised anyway. And I participated in some conversations actually in a roundtable about the strategy for that, and I just think it's going to be like 3 to 5 years before that gets sorted out, and it will keep getting directed back into the NDIA. So it's very hard to get funding for NDIS projects, but lots of funding around, particularly in Queensland, for social enterprise. So I just encourage her to, you know,
doing.
Yeah, and a social enterprise, for those of you who don't know, is just a business that's driven by mission and reinvesting its profits. So that can be, it's only reinvesting more than 50% of profit too. So that can be after a healthy wage has been drawn and after all your costs.
So reinvesting
our businesses, because, you know, so many people in our community are doing stuff because they want to have impact. So many of our businesses could be positioned as social enterprise.
Cool. Awesome.
Any other questions?
So basically the grants are government grants, but they can also be other ones as well, can't they?
Yeah, there's heaps of other grants as well. We just tend to focus on government grants because, I don't know, that's just what we mostly research for people. In our grants guide, you'll find lots of non-government grants, and there certainly are heaps of them out there. Traditionally, they're mostly for not-for-profits or community sector, which is why we created that separate guide. But not all community sector grants require you to be a not-for-profit or to have DGR status, which is like charity status. But even if you're doing something and you're not a charity, you can always, there's always a strategy in there. You know, you can always partner with a charity and be like, so to give you an example, we had a client who she was a cosmetic nurse, but she had a background in domestic violence, like personally, and she had used some cosmetic procedures to address scarring and stuff that she had as a result of those personal experiences. So we partnered her up with a not-for-profit who runs like accommodation and support services for people in domestic violence circumstances. And they auspiced the grant, so they put it in, and then we were able to get quite a bit of funding to help people with corrective procedures so that they could, you know, they're often scarred or their bones have been moved or whatever on their face, and then they don't have the confidence to apply for a job so it was a really amazing project that we worked on in a way that you can kind of turn what you do into something that's a social enterprise.
Cool. Awesome.
Kim, just a question on how financing, like banks and things like that, look at grants. Like if you've been accepted for a grant, say $40,000, and then you go as part of your, I guess, business plan for the next 12 months, do they look favorably on that, or just not really taken into consideration?
Look, it's not really taken into consideration because it's not relative to that model of finance. So often, you know, they'll be like, oh, why did you get because the grant, you might have just gone for the grant because it was there, right? Not because you needed the money. So yeah, it's not really a big deal. But what I would say is you just need to be in touch with your accountant regarding any implications for you of, you know, tax implications or income implications. And you still have to pay GST separately. So the government can't fund the GST component of a grant. So say you're getting a grant to build a software system and the cost for that is $100,000 and then there's $10,000 GST. The government can't give you the GST component because that'd be like them giving you the money that you have to give back to them. So you still have to fund that. And lots of grants have a co-contribution requirement, especially at that higher end. So even EMDG in a way is co-contribution because you've got to pay 50%, right? So they give you back 50% of what you pay. So you've got to have some skin in the game with many of them. But there are also some some schemes that are like government-backed loan schemes. So they're like between kind of traditional finance and grant. So they are loan schemes, but they're often low doc and really fast results, and the interest rate will be really low. Like the export finance loan will give you up to, if you're eligible, will give you up to 250,000 pretty quickly, like within a couple of days, to help with cash flow so you can continue to export. So it's like a different scheme, and that interest rate I think is about 6%. So it's a different scheme to a grant, but it is a really good option if you need to get out there, but you don't have the cash flow for it. I think you have to be generating between 250,000 and 2 million to be eligible for that one.
Is that 250 to 2 mil just in imports or exports?
No, just business revenue.
Oh.
Yeah. And I think the tax term they do is like 12 months. So it's like, say that you're doing research and development tax incentive, and most people who are claiming that, they're going to be claiming back like $100,000, right? Because if you have an eligible project for that, you're entitled to a 43% reimbursement on your tax paid. And the activities include, external consultants, wages, superannuation, plus any hard costs you've got. So say you worked 80% of your time, maybe there's you and 2 other team members, and you all worked 80% on this new thing that you're doing. And the wage cost was like $150,000. Oh my God, I've picked a number. I'm never going to be able to work out 43% of 150,000. But say it was 200,000, right? So you're going to get back like 43% of that, which is going to be about 75 grand, 80 grand or something. Now, if you're already in profit, that comes as a tax, like a tax credit. And so it'll offset any tax this year and sit in the system for next year's tax. You don't need it all this year, but if you're not yet in profit, it comes as a cashback. So we got a client who's just built this amazing weather forecasting automation system. It's really interesting. And so she's spent like 450,000 of her own dollars in the last financial year building this thing. It's got the potential to be like, it'll probably go straight to like a $5 million business in a couple of years. But so she was able to claim back 43% of that, and she's not yet generating revenue because she's just got through the R&D and prototyping stage. So she just gets the cash back, which is amazing. She's like, her mind was blown when she's like, what?
Stuff. So Kim, if we got you to do the strategy call and kind of went through the whole, what grants are available, etc.
Yep.
That's $1,000 or whatever.
Yep.
If you come back with say 5 different grants or whatever, is it $1,000 for each grant for you guys to then?
No, it's not. It depends on the complexity of the grants, but our submission service starts at about 25,000, and that's 5 grants submitted. And we also give you a list of the awards we think you should apply for with that one. And then you can kind of scale from there. It just depends on the potential. We don't really like talking about that product though until we see what's in that first stage, because we only take people into that program if there's at least $250,000 that we can see for them. So that'd be like, if we know that you're going to be able to do export market development grant, research and development, and then there's like 3, 4, 5 other good solid ones that you've got a good shot at, then we'd talk to you about that. And by the way, I will say though, even with that product, the strategy and grants listing, say it's never actually happened, but say we had that conversation with you and we didn't find any angle for you with grants, then we just refund that money. So we're not in the business of kind of taking the money and giving you a list of inaccurate grants, because our success comes from getting people money at the end of the day. And my goal is $100 million in the next 5 years back into the Australian small business economy. So that's what we're generating. I think we'll actually do it in about 2.5 years. But that's what we're kind of structured for. The excitement for me is just helping businesses to grow, like I'm really a strategist and an ideas agent, I suppose. And I just get excited about what's possible for people. So I'm just like, well, how could they use grants? What could we do for them? So, it's just all about identifying in that first level, okay, well, what are the 5 that you should apply for? And do you want to do it yourself or do you want us to do it? On average, you could expect a grant to take about a week's worth of work. Obviously that can change depending on the complexity of the grant. But export market development, it's the only one we do this inexpensively, and that's because we only do them if we know you're eligible. So we know that you're going to win and be happy. We've got a streamlined way to do it, so we do it quite quickly. But other grants that are specific to your business and project will involve more time with us kind of shaping it and working with you to understand it and pulling together the evidence.
Yeah, cool. All right. Because I'm just kind of, as you can tell, I'm a bit sort of awestruck by it all. You know, trying to figure out how to grow your business, and you're sitting there going, well, I want to go overseas and I want to do this and I want to do that.
Yeah. And what is your business exactly?
So I'm the one that looks after all the audio visual for Blueprint,
okay,
and a whole bunch of other different companies. And so, yeah, I've got clients all over the world that I kind of look after, and yeah, it's, I mean, that is a no-brainer, that one, but I can just, I'm trying to expand the business and with equipment and property, somehow get a proper location and different things. So, and staffing is like a big one for me right now. I just got my first hotel, which means that I'm like the sole provider, I guess, for a hotel, which is kind of cool. But for that, I then need staffing and equipment and all sorts of crap.
And where are you based, Dan? You're New South Wales.
Well, I'm actually in Wollongong, so just south of Sydney, kind of regional. I don't know if it's classified as regional. It's up and down. It changes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Sydney has one of our favourite grants is in Sydney, the MVP grant. So that gives you 250 up to 200, but you got to put in the same amount, whatever you ask for, to get something from sort of MVP stage or idea to MVP stage. So it's like concept to creation kind of grant. Generally favouring tech products, so people building apps, you know, some sort of thing in that space, but it's a cracker of a grant. You could look also at that similar strategy that I was talking to Alana about, like what is out there for people to work with you? How could you incentivize people to choose you? So the like event funding, you know, New South Wales does really good event funding. So you could be targeting people that do events from the perspective of, well, you know, I'll help you get a grant. In terms of scaling your team though, yes, there's simple ways to do that. It's not, the boosting apprenticeship scheme is not as generous now as it was a year ago, but there are still some rebates available. And the other thing is, do you need people on site? Because you could use people in other locations to access cheaper wage cost.
Yeah,
so if it's about people doing the, you know, video editing and stuff afterwards, then you'd maybe go, oh, well, we'll get a trainee who's based in Queensland and works from home. And then that way you can claim the traineeship incentives and the back to work.
Yeah, right.
Because those are always based on where the job is. So if the person works from home, then it doesn't really matter where you are.
Yeah, true. I'm also looking at running a couple of big cruises over in the US and Australia, probably to trial it, where we actually get industry people onto the cruise. And yeah, so that one's really exciting. It's kind of then you get the big ass sponsors like the Coca-Colas or whatever to then, you know, have space on the ship. So, but I mean, we're talking probably aiming for 2,000 or 3,000 people on a ship.
Yeah. And what are they doing? Coming to like an industry conference?
Yeah, exactly. So industry experts or industry leaders, for example, coming on a cruise, and then you've got your it's fun. It's hosted by a brand, and then you've got all the other brands paying $300,000-400,000 grand just to have a restaurant or whatever named after them, so that when people go in there, they're kind of giving away all the IP here, but that's cool. You know, that kind of thing. So it's that's an interesting. The market is so big over in the US, man. It's just freaking nuts.
I'd say with that, you could look at something like export finance, and then you'd go start generating some export revenue, and then claim 50% back through EMDG.
Yep.
And the other thing is you could look at grants that are outside Australia for that too.
Oh, really?
But you could also look at event funding. I think that could fall under the banner of event funding. And there's some federal funding for stuff like taking Australian talent overseas, you know. So that's often used in the arts and culture sector, but you could probably apply it in that way too.
Okay.
And for you, it'd be interesting to look at, could you pilot something like that in New South Wales? Because you could get some pretty good, like we just did a couple of event funds for a couple of other Blueprint members, and it was like 60 grand to run a 1-day event.
Wow.
So it's just like, could you do something like that in a 1-dayer? Could you pull that together if we could get you the funding? That's called the B Sydney scheme, BE Sydney. It'll be closed now, but it'll open again. You know, it opens each year, that one.
Yeah, cool.
And there's also there's one open at the moment that's a Sydney like festivals and events grant. So it doesn't have to be festivals though. So you could just look at what is the New South Wales version of this? And if you did that, you could probably claim research and development, because you'd be looking at, you know, can we integrate different providers into one space, and we just have to figure out how to make it different enough to be eligible for that.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's too many things happening. I'm just like, boom.
Yeah. No worries. All right. Well, we better wrap it up there anyway, because I've got to jump on at 10 o'clock. But nice to see all your beautiful faces. I was missing everyone after last week. I was like,
Thank you so much, Kim. That's amazing.
oh, no worries. Nice to chat to you all.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Kim.
you. We'll be in touch.
Bye.